23. They bother you all the time. Ousted Negro student contends Arkansas Democrat, February 13, 1958. In the article that followed, Minijean explained the pressure she had been under at school. She said she had only had half a white friend at Central, a two-faced girl who ran hot and cold. Of the other students, she said, they throw rocks, they spill ink on your clothes, and they call you nigger. They bother you every minute. I cried for an hour when word came that the envelope sent to Minijean was a suspension notice. I was devastated when Superintendent Blossom said he would recommend her expulsion. But when the NAACP and her parents announced they would push to have a hearing, I kept a glimmer of hope. Back at school, I didn't have very much time to be sad. We were under siege, at the mercy of those who saw Minijean's expulsion as their victory and evidence they could immediately get rid of all of us. I was warned that since I had been Minijean's good friend, and, like her, I was tall and not at all shy, I would become the next target for expulsion. 1 nigger down, 8 to-go cards and signs flooded the school. We couldn't turn around without somebody pushing a card in our faces or chanting awful verses at us like, she was black but her name was brown, and now she ain't around. Attacks on us by hostile students increased. I read in the paper that Thurgood Marshall said he didn't know how much more unpleasant treatment we could take at Central High. That night I wrote in my diary. I sometimes wish I could change myself into a psychiatrist to determine what makes me such a hated member of this school. Can they really be treating me this way simply because I am brown? That's all. Oh, no, I heard myself shout as I was walking up the 14th Street stairwell one morning. It wasn't yet 8:40, and I was already the victim of a dousing with raw eggs from someone standing on the stairs above my head. The odor bothered me, but even more, it was the feel of that slimy substance oozing very slowly through my hair and onto my face, while at the same time raw eggs slithered over the sweater Aunt Maydell had given me for Christmas. I stood still, wondering what to do and where to go. I felt so humiliated, I prayed that a huge dark hole would appear in the floor and swallow me up. The niggers come to have breakfast. I can tell. She's wearing eggs, one boy called. I never said a word back to the group hovering with their ugly catcalls. I knew they were just hoping I'd do or say something that would result in my expulsion. I backed down the stairs and out the door to go home. Well, this egg is wonderful for putting moisture in the hair, Grandma said. Some people use it for that, you know. Maybe we ought to start it on a regular basis. She was trying to wipe out as much as she could. Then I would have to bathe and wash my hair. Hold still, she continued. After a nice long bath, you can hurry back to school, and this will have been just a refreshing break in your morning. I've never been so embarrassed. Oh, I'll bet there have been other times and there'll be more. Embarrassment is not a life-threatening problem. It can be washed away with a prayer and a smile, just like this egg is washed away with a little water. I know, but it's the same way I feel when they spit on me. I feel like they've taken away my dignity. Dignity is a state of mind, just like freedom. These are both precious gifts from God that no one can take away unless you allow them to. As Grandma spoke, she motioned me to turn my head to the other side. You could take charge of these mind games, you know. How do you mean? Take, for example, this egg in your hair. Suppose you'd have told the boys who did this, thank you, with a smile. Then you've changed the rules of the game. What they want is for you to be unhappy. That's how they get pleasure. Yeah, but that would be letting them win. Not exactly. Maybe it would defeat their purpose. They win when you respond the way they expect you to. Change the rules of the game, girl, and they might not like it so much. They'd think I was crazy. They'd think you were no longer their victim. For the rest of the morning, as I walked the halls, amid my hecklers, I couldn't stop thinking about what it would be like to feel as though I were in charge of myself. I always believed Grandma India had the right answer, so I decided to take her advice. As I tried to open a classroom door, 2 boys pushed it closed. At first I tried to pull it open, but then I remembered changing the rules of the game. I stood up straight, smiled politely, and said in a friendly voice, "Thank you. I've been needing exercise. You've done wonders for my arm muscles." I chatted on and on as if they were my friends. They looked at me as though I were totally nuts. Then they let go of the door. I felt great power surging up my spine like electricity. I left them, standing there looking at each other. During lunch, I learned Ernie and Terry had been the victims of yet another devilish deed. While Terry participated in gym class, someone took his school clothes and dumped them in the shower. Ernie had so much trouble with students stealing his gym clothes that he bought his own, which he carried with him in a briefcase until someone wrested it away and stuffed his clothes into the toilet in the girls' restroom. On February 14, Valentine's Day, it snowed. That afternoon, as we stood in the snow waiting for our ride, we were attacked with snowballs filled with rocks. Mr. Eckford, Elizabeth's father, bolted from the car to rescue us, but he, too, was bombarded. Little Rock's finest police officers and members of the Federalized National Guard stood by watching with their arms folded as we were hit time after time. Even when we pleaded for their assistance, they did nothing. When I arrived home, Grandma handed me a large, oddly shaped envelope. I suspect it's a special greeting from that young man you ignore most of the time. After all, it is a special day. I took... It was a card from Vince. As I read the beautiful words, I was sad that I couldn't talk to him on the phone or see more of him, but for the life of me, I couldn't fit him into my schedule. Even my daydreams about him were beginning to fade because integration was taking up all the space in my mind. 3 CHS pupils suspended. Minijean Brown expelled. Arkansas Gazette, February 18, 1958. Minijean was expelled after a 40-minute hearing. The official announcement of her expulsion coming after all that had been done to stop it was a devastating defeat for us. The fact that the school board at the same time suspended 3 white pupils, 2 for wearing one down, 8 to-go cards and 1 for pushing Gloria down a flight of stairs, didn't lessen the blow. The NAACP had counted on getting Minijean's expulsion reversed, but Blossom and the school board were adamant in sticking to their conclusion, despite all the pressure on them. National NAACP officials arranged for Minijean to have a scholarship to a famous private New York high school called New Lincoln. She would live with the family of a renowned psychologist, Dr. Kenneth Clark. I had read that it was his search that had supported Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP's legal suit that resulted in the 1954 Supreme Court decision to integrate the schools. It was a fabulous opportunity for her, but all I could think about was how far New York would be from Little Rock. We would no longer be able to get together to have our usual talks. At the same time, I tried not to be jealous that Minijean would be escaping the hell that was my daily life. Still, I found myself daydreaming about what it would be like to get on that airplane with her and go to a place where there was no central high school, no segregationists, and no pain stinging my heart every time someone called me a nigger. I imagined that she'd have normal dates with nice boys, real junior prom, and friends who smiled at her and talked with her every single day. She wouldn't be lonely anymore. But most of all, she wouldn't have to be frightened all day long that somebody was going to hit her, say nasty things, or even try to kill her. Late one afternoon, a few days before Minijean was to leave, I sat on the side of her bed, watching her pack. The two of us were talking and giggling. Again, I was overwhelmed with those mixed feelings. I desperately wanted her to stay, and at the same time, I would have given anything to go with her. She was showing me her wardrobe, gifts from friends to help her adjust to her new life. They were the most beautiful clothes I had ever seen. Angora sweaters in deep autumn shades of rust and green, with matching corduroy skirts, a few of those wonderful fuzzy collars everyone was wearing, a velvet blazer, and even a beauty, full trench coat. I was so sad I could barely speak, but I was pretending everything was all right and that I was happy for her. What I really wanted to say was I miss you already. I love you like a sister. I don't know what I'll do without you. But that would sound too mushy, so I kept my thoughts to myself. Suddenly, she slumped down onto the bed amid all those beautiful clothes and her new luggage and started to cry uncontrollably. I'm really sorry all this is happening. It's going to make it hard for the rest of you. I tried to console her. It's not your fault, Minijean. I'll miss you. She embraced me. I'll miss riding home with you and playing records with you and... Yeah, but look at where you're going. New Lincoln High School is a famous place. Those are rich people you're staying with. I'll bet you get your own phone and maybe even a car. You'll meet important people. Do you forgive me? There's nothing to forgive, but for the grace of God, it might have been any one of us. To distract myself from the tears welling up inside my heart, I began folding things to put in her suitcase. If you don't pack, I get to keep all these gorgeous things and go away, and you'll have to stay here in my place. I teased. With the announcement that Minijean was definitely out, the segregationists went wild. The signs on the walls said, "All niggers go north." An article in the newspaper announced hall patrols by federalized National Guardsmen would be eliminated, although they would remain in the building and make periodic checks. That announcement granted segregationists more permission to have a field day with us. The school days that followed were noted in my diary in terms of the particular indignities I suffered. Putting every detail down on paper would give God a chance to see for himself what was going on. I thought. February 18th, 1958. A red-haired, freckle-faced girl. The one who taunts me in home room, keeps trailing me in the hallway between classes. Today she spit on me, then slapped me. Later in the day as I came around a corner, she tripped me so that I fell down a flight of stairs. First picked myself up to face a group of boys who then chased me up the stairs. When I told a school official about it, he said she was from a good family and would never do such a thing, and I needed a teacher to witness these incidents if he were going to take any action. He asked me what did I expect when I came to a place where I knew I wasn't welcome. He warned me to keep Minijean's expulsion in mind. February 19. Andy again. He's really beginning to frighten me. As I emerged from the cafeteria today, he walked right up, face to face, stepping on my toes so I couldn't move for a long moment. He shoved me backward, and then held a wrench up to my face. He waved it around and shouted all sorts of threats that he could do a lot of awful things to my face with it. My knees were shaking, and I didn't know what to do. I said, "Thank you." His eyes grew huge, quicker than the speed of light. I jumped away from him and ran. "Just think all night about what I'm going to do to you tomorrow," he shouted after me. February 20. I got hit across the back with a tennis racket. I managed to smile and say, "Thank you." Andy said, "What did you say, nigger?" I repeated, "Thank you very much." I spit up blood in the restroom. I felt as though someone had stuck a hot poker through my back, into my insides. I saw him several times during the afternoon, but I never let him see me cry, and I didn't report it to anybody. I think only the warrior exists in me now. Melba went away to hide. She was too frightened to stay here. School board cites inability to enforce compliance. Asks U.S. COURT to halt integration, Arkansas Democrat, February 21st, 1958. U.S. Won't get into Central High School case, Arkansas Democrat, February 21st, 1958. On Saturday, February 22, a day after the school board asked the court to halt integration, Minijean left for New York. Even her departure was marred by a bomb threat that delayed her American Airlines flight. Waving Minijean off at the airport was difficult for all of us. There were lots of reporters and photographers taking pictures for the newspapers. We had become somewhat accustomed to their presence after all those months, and we were quite friendly with the ones from the north. We called them by their first names and frequently had off-their-court conversations with them. But just this one time we were weary of their presence. It was a moment when we wanted to be alone with our pain. At first we simply ignored them, behaving as though they were invisible. Still, even on this very sad day, we couldn't have them taking pictures of our tears. That would only be fodder for the segregationists. So we tried to pretend all was well. That night, I wrote in my diary, "My dearest friend, Minijean, left today." I couldn't stop crying. People at the airport said we all look very old and tired, for the battle must be getting harder. I pray Minijean will be happy. She deserves it, don't we all? The Little Rock School Board had now petitioned the federal courts to consider again the whole question of school integration, in light of its negative experience since September 3. By the beginning of March, I had sunk into the state of mind you get into when you know you have to take castor oil and there's no way out. I just did what had to be done, without discussing it or thinking about it. I would get up, polish my saddle shoes, bathe, get dressed, dump my bowl of oatmeal into the toilet so Grandma India would think I'd eaten it, but my nervous stomach wouldn't have to eject it, and go to the war inside that school. I listened to shouts, to ugly names, while I smiled and said thank you. I waited for a ride, came home, did homework, got to bed, and started over again the next day. I felt kind of numb, as though nothing mattered anymore. I thought my routine must be like a soldier's fighting in wartime. Only I was lucky enough to have weekends in another world. One day I was doing just that, thinking about my other world and about the headline I had seen that read, "It's LOELY, says Minijean of her New York school. What would it be like to have just one lovely day of school amid pleasant people who smiled when you looked them in the eye?" As I stood alone, outside the 16th Street entrance of Sin Trowel High, I was shivering against the cold, waiting for my ride home that Friday afternoon. I was immersed in fantasies about my quiet, safe weekend. My body was there, but my mind was somewhere else. My 101st guard, Danny, had said, "When you let yourself lose your focus, you make big mistakes." I suddenly realized that I had done just that, made a foolish mistake. The 16th Street entrance was one of the most dangerous areas of Central High's grounds. It was a place I would never have chosen to wait alone, had I been conscious of my action. It was an isolated spot with no teachers, principals, or guards keeping watch, but I was too weary to walk the 2 blocks to the other side where it was safer and where my driver expected to pick me up. I decided I'd be wiser to stand still and hope that the carpool driver would figure out I wasn't waiting in the appropriate place and would come around to this side of the building looking for me. So I said a little prayer and allowed myself to lapse deep into my thoughts once more. Suddenly there was a voice in the distance, calling my name, jolting me from my thoughts. "It's nigger Melba." It was Andy's voice shouting at me. My heart started beating fast. Where the heck was he? I looked to see how far off he was. He was more than a block away, coming up from the playing field with a group of his friends. They were walking fast, almost galloping. Even if I started running, I couldn't outdistance all of them. I looked around frantically, searching for help. "Hey, Melba, you gotta get out of here." The second voice was much closer. I wasn't alone. There was a sleek, muscular boy, about 6 feet tall, wearing a varsity jacket and a cap, with a bushy shock of blonde curls peeking from beneath it. He was leaning against the passenger side of a 1949 Chevy, parked at the curb, only a few feet to my left. Was he one of Andy's friends, who'd come to corner me and hold me there? His face looked familiar to me. He resembled one of those big tough boys who got their kicks taunting me. But why wasn't he coming toward me, shouting ugly words at me like the others? My mouth went dry. My feet seemed bolted to the ground. My knees were shaking so badly that I doubted whether I could run. Where would I go? Andy and his friends were dancing about each other in a circle, huddling to decide how they would have their fun with me. One boy started to run back in the direction from which they had come. Another boy joined them. What were they going back to get? I wondered. A rope. "Migger on the wall! Who's the deadest of them all?" Andy shouted as he hesitated, waiting for his friends. Now, they were only about a quarter of a block away. "Stand still. Don't run, because if you do, it'll be worse for you," Andy shouted. "Do? What now?" My mind scrambled to figure out what I should. "Melba," the blonde boy whispered my name. "Listen to me. I'm going to call you nigger loud. I'm going to curse at you, but I'm going to put my keys on the trunk of this car. Get out of here, now." "My name is Link. I'll call you later." "But I can't do that." "Get the hell out of here. Andy's going to kill you." "But I can't. I stood there gasping for words. He's up to something, I thought. Now I'm surrounded. Why doesn't the carpool driver come after me now? Right now, please, God. "You don't have any choice," he whispered. "Go." I turned to see that Andy and his friends were only a short distance away. I wasn't even sure I could make it to the car. "If you don't get out of here, you're going to get us both killed," the blonde boy urged. "Hey, Andy, we're going to have us some nigger tonight," I heard Link shout as he walked away from the car, toward them. I grabbed the keys and ran around quickly to open the door on the driver's side. I hopped in and locked all the doors. By the time I turned the key in the engine, Andy was clawing at the lock, while the other boys popped off the windshield wipers and tried to get into the passenger side. Link stood glaring at me with an anxious look on his face, spewing hate words just like them. I pressed down the clutch, shifted into first gear, and the car jumped forward. Andy was still running alongside, holding onto the door handle, but as I sped up, he had to let go. Even if that boy Link got me later for stealing his car, I was alive and on my way for now. After a couple of blocks, when I could breathe a little easier, I craned to look around. I couldn't see anybody following me. "Thank you, God," I whispered as I headed for home. "Thank you for saving me one more time."